My family, I have some updates for you, and please listen attentively.
And remember, we are watching what's happening over in Iran.
We're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon.
There's quite a lengthy ex-post and speech from the Supreme Leader, perhaps whoever put that on X. I'll read some more for you, Harris. The Supreme Leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, saying, quote, Iran's new management of the Strait of Hormuz and the corresponding legal framework will secure comfort and progress for the benefit of all nations of the region. Now, many in this region, including here in the Emirates, are not buying it, Harris. Some back home are calling the war a stalemate. Talks have stalled. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. The Supreme Leader thinks Iran should control the strait, as we just heard. The U.S. Navy blockade, as you mentioned, has forced 42 ships to turn around or remain pierside in Iran. It also appears, though, Harris, the blockade is causing some collateral damage back home. Gas prices have surged to their highest levels in 4 years. At one point, Brent crude, the international benchmark, was over $120 a barrel before going back down. Iran's parliamentary speaker predicted on X that number will likely increase to $140.
There's no question that Vladimir Putin's Russia is taking serious action to undermine our efforts for success in Iran. Is there any question about that?
Senator, I think there's actions and activities that are mindful of the hearing room we're in, but there's definitely some action there.
They're pointing out exactly where our bases are, and they resulted in some hits on our bases. Russia is an unsavory actor in this.
That's absolutely true. Helping any sort of assistance with targeting is definitely an action that should never be tolerated.
Well, concerning some of these developments that have to do with the U.S., Israeli, and Iran war and all those tensions, Pastor Chris had this to say.
And remember, we are watching what's happening over in Iran. We're watching carefully. And if anything happens different from how we would want things to go, you can be sure we would rise up to correct it.
And one thing about my man of God, Pastor Chris Oyakilome, when he speaks like this, he actually means it. We followed him for years. And I actually remember during the 2020 thing that happened with the COVID, and also 2021 up to 2022 and all that, he came out making some bold claims. And he started as maybe the only minister who was praying against all these things that were happening. And people started opposing him and all that. And until the end, where they actually found out that he was correct. So this is a man who knows what he's actually talking about. He's one of the main voices that stood for the body of Christ during that, COVID pandemic and all that, until we saw its demise, until we saw the demise of those plans. So when he's talking like this about this, US-Iran war and all that, believe him.
I told you it's the, I just called him out real straight. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review. Mr. Speaker, we are not joining the strikes, but we will continue our defensive actions in the region. We all remember the mistakes of Iraq, and we have learned those lessons. Any UK actions must always have a lawful basis and a viable, thought-through plan.
The President of France
did not choose this war. We are not taking part in it, and we have a purely defensive position to protect our nationals in support of our allies.
Our objectives are clear and have been defined since the first day and have not changed.
And their allies, the Prime Minister of Spain, I don't know whether he's the President or Prime Minister of Spain.
We are against this war. We are against this war because it is illegal, there's no reason behind it, and it's causing a lot of damage. This is a very defining moment for the European Union, and I think that we need to send a clear message to our citizens and the rest of the world that Europe is with multilateralism and is with international law.
Yes, these are the people who are instigating the Iranian leaders to try and get it protracted as much as possible. They don't want the war to stop. They want to see what they can get out of it. And their target is how to extend it into the November midterm elections in the United States.
And talking about the midterms, this is actually having a very, very big impact.
Now, the midterms are going to be upon us before you know it, and there's still a whole lot of issues playing on American minds which could swing votes one way or the other. For example, a recent poll from Gallup found inflation and high prices, not surprisingly, are continuing to top Americans' list of their most important financial concerns. Around a third of those polled believe so, which is among the highest in Gallup's more than 20-year trend history. To talk about this and a whole lot more, let's bring in our polling guru, managing director of the CT Group US, Larry Grossman. Obviously, there's a lot of economic stuff playing out right now out of the Iran war. But even before that, what's your reaction to how the economy is playing out in the polls? And what does that mean for the Republican brand for Trump and more going into the midterms?
I think you have to start with what the president promised on Election Day, which was he was going to solve the inflation problem on day number one, right after he was sworn in on January 20th a year ago. And that clearly hasn't happened. Every single day when they drive past their gas station and they see increasing prices.
How does that then play through to the broader midterm equation? Because, you know, people will separate one from the other, or maybe not. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so what you have to look at is the 40 to 50 toss-up or competitive races around the country. And I think what you see in every single one of those is that in the generic ballot, Democrats versus Republicans, not specifically about specific candidates, but in the generic ballots, the Democrats are outpolling the Republicans everywhere you go. And where the most alarming thing for Republicans are in districts that were plus 15, plus 13 for Trump in the 2024 elections, that's now a 1 or 2 point margin. So suddenly there's more competitive races. So I think you're seeing in all the polls around the country in the congressional seats, not only are Democrats outpolling Republicans across the traditional block of 40 competitive seats, you're starting to see more seats come into play, and that'll just force everyone to spend more money and to focus on seats.
You see, my family, and Pastor Chris has been talking about this.
They want to see how much, because they kept encouraging Iran to push a little more, and not to come to the negotiation table, and to delay. Why do they want the delay? Because they want to see how far they can push close to November for the midterm elections in the United States.
So yes, let's continue with the original video. And remember, this was from the third day of the 3 days of prayer and fasting, Global Day of Prayer and Fasting. Okay, the recently concluded edition.
And their target is how to extend it into the November midterm elections in the United States and see how the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz can affect price of oil and, of course, cost of living in the United States and, of course, around the world, so that there can be a kind of outcry. That's what they want. But there's another part of it too. The higher the cost of fuel, the more you would be driven towards green revolution. Right? But I don't even have a problem with a part of it, electricity, so long as the electricity comes at the right costs.
Yes.
And in the right way.
Yes, sir.
Not in the way they're trying to manipulate it right now. But I have something to tell you about that because we're about to surprise them. Yeah, I'm telling you. So we're going to welcome the electric version, but in an extraordinary way. surprise the world. You'll see it. I'll tell you more in our next, either your Love World specials or the fasting and praying we're going to be doing next month. Well, I'm glad you joined us, and I hope that you were blessed tremendously as I was.
So my family, that was it from Pastor Chris Oyakilome. I hope, some of these things we'll be sharing with you. It actually comes at a greater risk. YouTube may find some issues with me for sharing things like this, but I actually feel they have to be shared. Yes. And we also move on to some of the things that a minister in America, Brother Brandon, a prophetic voice, he calls himself a watchman. He actually said this about this assassination attempt on Trump.
I will address one thing. When I say my opinion about this, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. People want to know, Brandon, what do you think about the assassination attempt of Donald Trump and what happened with this shooter? And in my opinion, it was fake. Brandon, do you feel they staged this? In my opinion, yes. Do I believe it's political theater? Yes.
So, I actually found this very interesting. Well, what are they saying about this in the news?
Well, it's been less than a week since the third assassination attempt on President Trump's life, and he's already joking that he might have to wear a bulletproof vest or not.
I don't know if I can handle looking 20 pounds heavier. These guys, they look so good. Some of these guys are physical specimens. I've been asked about that, and I guess it's something you consider. In one way, you don't like to do it because you're giving into a bad element, and so I don't know.
Well, Rowan, conservatives are upset and unhappy about the political violence that keeps coming from the left. This is the third attempt to kill President Trump that we know about. And there have been a number of other instances of assassinations and attempted murder of conservatives by liberals. What the Democrats are mostly saying online is that they think Cole Allen's attempted assassination of Trump was staged. That is the word they use. It was staged, which is completely insane, but that is what many, many Democrats are saying. What we're not seeing is any recognition from any of the leaders of the Democratic Party that their campaign of hate against Trump and the Republicans is responsible for the political violence that we have seen. They have no intention of dialing it back at all. So I think we haven't seen the last assassination attempt against President Trump or against others.
So all those are actually interesting ways of looking into it. Do you actually feel that it was staged and the like? We actually shared our opinions. If you actually check the initial reaction to the video, to all those things that transpired. But I actually want to hear from you. The main thing, my family, is don't forget to pray for our leaders. Okay, we keep on stressing on this. And yes, an end will come to some of those videos that we keep sharing. We'll start focusing on other areas. But we actually felt, the month of March, we should be mainly focusing on some of these global events that are happening. We felt that if people don't pray about all these things, something worse might happen. And I thank God we prayed. Pastor Chris declared global days of prayer. We've been praying, and we're actually seeing things begin to change little by little. So I'll meet you in the next one as always. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless you.
Brandon, do you feel they staged this? In my opinion, yes. Do I believe it's political theater? Yes. There's things that I am seeing that I have not put out on public that is very serious concerning our president. The Lord has not released me to talk about that. But I'm going to tell you this. If that was staged and it's fake, there's a real something coming. That's what I feel. I believe it's a foreign nation. I've already told you, Russia. I've already told you, France. There's something more to this. Do I believe that we can stop it? I'm still praying into that.